Let's hear from Alexander Johnson. And he had a couple really cool things to talk about when he's addressed the media. The first one here is on the defense, about getting a little more stops in the run. And I thought this was kind of a good thing.
Man, we just got to play gap sound, get in your gap and hold it. And if it ain't in your gap, then get out of it instead of just moving around and pieces not falling to the right place where you're supposed to be and stuff like that. So that's the biggest thing, just trying to play gap sound. And I feel like we're playing pretty physical and tough. We got to be where we need to be when they run it.
Okay, Ben, let me ask you very specifically on that point he's making there, okay? Because I feel like that's an oversimplification of why they're struggling against the run. The combinations of, well, you're missing your starting defensive line. You're also having time of possession flipped on you because the offense isn't staying on the field. I appreciate that he's not throwing those things under the bus and he's not making excuses of, well, we have all this injuries and all that stuff. He's saying we got to be gap sound.
Well,
is it simple enough to be gap sound and be better against the run?
Well, I mean, they do need to be gap sound, but that's the pablum answer. That's the great week of practice answer. And that's the answer a linebacker is going to give you, because that's what they do need to be, is, see it, slow it, and react it. I think that, you hit the nail on the head. Really, it's a combination of things. You got a backup defensive line in there that's not getting push. You've got an offense that's not keeping your defense off the field, and they're getting gassed in the third quarter and fourth quarter. And that's where these running yards come from. You go back and look, teams aren't really running the ball particularly well on the first half against Denver. It's just they just get going downhill, and snowball going downhill gathers mass, and it's just you get a gas defense, a D-line that's not getting any push, and an offense that's not keeping them off the field, and it's a bad combination. It's a triangle of sucks. So I think that I think if you're Denver, yes, the linebackers do need to be gap sound, but that's not the total answer here. But he's not going to throw the guys in front of him under the bus.
No,
like that.
I didn't expect him to do that, and so that's why I'm kind of piggybacking on his answer, if you will. So he's going to say gap sound. That's what a linebacker should say.
Right.
But I think there's a little bit more nuance to that. Now, this next answer I want to play is about getting more turnovers, forcing more turnovers on the defensive side of the ball. It's a really interesting answer that he gave, but I'd love to hear from you first on what it takes for a defense to kind of turn that faucet on and off. And we've seen it before. It comes in bunches. Sometimes it does. Miami's experiencing that right now as a defense. They're just getting turnovers multiple times over the course, especially as Tua's taken over. He hasn't really needed to do as much because the Miami defense is really helping him out. The special teams is helping him out. They're picking him up a little bit. The Broncos defense needs to do a little bit of that too. So how do you turn on that faucet?
You get Ed Donatel back. That's the hidden thing. Everybody's talking about those points that have been getting up the last couple of games. Where the Broncos have been missing, Ed Donatel, who's worked with Vic Fangio for a long time, and they trust each other as far as what they see. Getting Shelby Harris back would help, certainly. I don't think that's going to happen, but getting him back this week would help. I think that how do you do that? You have a catalyst. You have some kind of igniting play that starts it. That's how it works for defense. Defense is an emotional unit, and you get some big play. Just some big play happens. And you get a favorable bounce, and all of a sudden you start to feel it. And you're like, okay, all right, we got the turnover. And then the offense goes and puts that turnover in. They go put it in for 6. And now all of a sudden you're like, oh, okay, all right.
Momentum.
We don't have to play tight because our offense has got us today. We got them the ball. They paid it off. So now we can go back out there and we keep doing those things we're doing. Maybe we can gamble a little more than we were. We don't have to play as tight. And that catalyst that started as a spark, you give that thing a little bit of oxygen, now all of a sudden it's a roaring fire. And that's how defense works. It's a very emotional unit, and you just get a few things going, and like we talk about that snowball going downhill, it's the same thing.
All right, well, here's what Alexander Johnson had to say about that.
Yeah, you have to have a conscious effort about it. You got to be thinking about it. You got to be able to – you can't just go out there and just play. You got to really be thinking about trying to get the ball out. And one of the biggest things is punching at the ball. So I just got to be able to do that a little more better. My hand's been messed up, but that ain't no excuse to not be punching at it. Okay,
so the point right there about the conscious effort, he said you can't just go out and play. You have to have a conscious effort about it. It's a little bit something extra. It's not just showing up and doing what your responsibilities are, which is fascinating because I've heard other defensive players saying that it is right place, right time. It is doing the small things.
Right.
So I think it's interesting to hear from him saying, yeah, it's not enough to do the small things. It's not enough just to show up and run the play and be in your gap, do exactly what you're supposed to do. You're going to have to do something a little bit extra. Why do you think that there's a little bit difference based on how some defensive players look at that?
Because not everybody's a linebacker or a back end. The D linemen are going to say, just, line up and do what you're supposed to do. The linebackers, corners, and safeties probably going to say the opposite. They're probably going to say, not just that, but you got to continue through the play. You got to punch, and Alexander talked about that, punching at the ball. You got to make an effort to try to rip the ball out of every play, making sure you're solid in your tackle, but also trying to punch the ball out when you have opportunity. You got to make a break on the ball. You got to see it, slow play it, and then react as soon as you know where it's going. You got to be on point about that stuff. You can't make wrong guesses. And the Broncos have done a pretty good job of that, not being out of position this year overall. I think that what Alexander's trying to say is just that extra effort is the difference between just making a stop on the play and generating a momentum-changing turnover. And I think that's where he's driving that point home.
It's a good point, though. I mean, based on position, maybe that is a little bit different. For
because the D lineman's not going to sit there and talk about wrap-up tackling and all that kind of stuff. Their job's to get after quarterback.
But a pass rusher will talk about it, and I know Vaughn has, and so has Bradley Chubb. They'll talk about, when you get to the backfield, maybe you're reaching for the ball more so than necessarily looking for the wrap-up sack.
Right. And so that's the thing. Is so, it's a little bit different in how they approach it, whereas the back seven are going to be talking about wrapping up and then trying to sneak a punch in and those kind of things.